Well, hello, fellow hackers. This is Jeremy, and this is another episode of Jeremy Builds, doing more about the my build of the DOS gaming console. And I did something interesting last night that I actually thought would make a correspondingly interesting video. No promises, though. Your mileage may vary on interest. Anyway, I was playing around with storage options for the DOS gaming console. One of them I came up with was zip. And yeah, I've been thinking about various storage options for doing like primary storage for my DOS gaming console. I thought about DVD RAM, which I talked about in my previous video. Couldn't get that working from a software perspective. I also thought about compact flash, which is what I'm ultimately going to go with. I'd also considered LS120 and zip, which is right there. And I ultimately didn't decide to go with LS120 or zip because they're just too goddamn slow. But in the process of doing that, I did learn of a way that I could mount an external zip disk and it would function as if it were an internal hard drive. And that involves some very interesting hackery, which is exactly what I'm going to show you here. So, what we have here is just, keyboard, regular old case, generic case. Here we have hardware that probably looks somewhat familiar to you, and that is because this is largely the guts of what's going to become the DOS gaming console. We've got the Asus P5A-B motherboard there, and a very loud fan and heatsink right there, underneath which is a Pentium MMX133. And on the left-hand side here, see if I can get a better shot of that. Somewhat. It's all shady. Right there is the Sound Blaster 16 sound card. And, of course, underneath this floppy cable right here, that is the NVIDIA GeForce FX 6200, I think it is. I haven't actually looked it up, but that's there. Now, one thing that's in here that is not going to be part of the DOS gaming console is this card right here. And that is a PCI SCSI card. I believe that's an Adaptec AHA 2940, something like that. Let me see if I can... yeah, I've got a flashlight over here. I can actually shine some light in there so you can sort of see. Oh, that's much better. So you see there's some chips right there, and get a better shot of the sound card, which is pointless because you've already seen it. Anyway, that's there. And of course we got the RAM installed, got power supply there, and fan right there, which is not hooked up, and up there monitor, which is hooked up. So otherwise, all that's in this computer is just this floppy drive right here, which is indeed going to go into the DOS gaming console when it's done, and then this regular old 100 meg zip drive right here, external, SCSI, not going to go in the DOS gaming console, but that's what I was using and playing with. Also, apparently, I got this for like $6.48 at some point, at a thrift store, invariably, and maybe I even got it at half off because that particular thrift store does once a month 50% off sales. And so, yeah, this zip drive works absolutely fantastically perfectly. And I have it hooked up through this big-ass cable winding all the way around down here into the SCSI card. See if you can see that, sort of. This SCSI card has a 50-pin internal header at the top, which is that right there. And I have plugged into it a 50-pin to 50-pin internal connector into a 50-pin external connector. You can sort of see that. And then that cable itself goes all the way over here, and on the back of the zip drive is a pair of 25-pin ports. We got the one that's actually it's plugged into there, and that is a pass-through port if you want to plug in something else. So, what this means is through a combination of, actually not a combination, just very simple BIOS built into the Adaptec SCSI card right there, what it can do is it can pretend that any removable drive, which this zip drive is, removable because, it's got this disk you can actually remove. Makes sense, right? It can pretend that removable drives are actually hard drives and represent them that way to the operating system. So that is the key thing here. So on this zip disk right here, I have installed, I actually partitioned it and formatted it using regular old DOS tools, using fdisk and format. Regular zip disk, so it's 100 megabytes. After partitioning and formatting, I then installed DOS 6.22, and I installed the shareware version of Doom 1.9. along with the sound card drivers for it right over there. So let's slide that in. You hear that spinning up all nice and pretty. And let's fire up the computer here and watch the screen. And beware, this fan right here is kind of loud, like I said. And look at this bullshit right here. Isn't this always the way this works? Like, every cable in the case just goes straight for anything that's going to be spinning. So get the fuck away from that thing, otherwise it's going to growl at me when I turn it on. Okay. So, let's see. Push the on power button here. This is actually a tower case. I just have it laying on its side because it's easier to work with that way. And we have startup right here. Counting up the RAM. Intel Pentium 166 MMX processor, indeed. Like I said in the previous video, this has, I think, 384 megs of RAM in it. It's going to just spun the floppy drive. And the IDE controller is still enabled, even though it doesn't have anything plugged into it. Now here's the key thing. See the AHA BIOS right there starting up. Let's hit Control A, so I can show you what I'm talking about here. See, it's detecting the zip drive, mounting it as hard disk 0, and this is the built-in BIOS setup utility for the AHA 2940. You get two options: one, configure and /view host adapter settings. That's what we want. I'm going to show you the option that you actually turn on here to mount this drive as if it were a hard drive. It's actually pretty simple. See, we have SCSI ID, parity checking, termination automatic, yeah, blah, 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 blah. See, boot device options, and we have boot SCSI ID and boot LUN number, both 0 and 0. Those are defaults. SCSI device configuration, and you get, whoa, shitload of options for every single SCSI device on the chain. So this supports 16 SCSI IDs, one of which is, of course, reserved for the card itself. The others you can configure per thingo, per channel. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then down here 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you have the same options for each one: initiate sync, blah, 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 transfer rate, blah, 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 enable disconnection, enable wide negotiation, and then send start unit, multiple unsport, and include BIOS scan. These are all the complete defaults for this card. This card, I think, can actually be configured for a transfer rate per channel of, indeed, up to 40 megabits per second. It's totally pointless for our purposes, though, because this is a zip drive, and it's only going to transfer a few times faster than a floppy anyway. Floppy being about 15 kilobytes per second. Anyway, the one to pay attention to is advanced configuration options in here, and plug-and-play scam support. We're not doing Windows plug-and-play drivers in this, so this does not need to be enabled, so it isn't. Reset SCSI bus, yeah. Extended BIOS translation for DOS drives greater than 1 gigabyte. So if we plug in like a 2 gigabyte SCSI drive, then this can handle that. Host adapter BIOS, that is key right there. We do want to have that enabled so that BIOS control can handle the drives, and thus we don't have to actually boot from a floppy that has the drivers for the card installed. So, this is also key right here. Support removable disks under BIOS as fixed disks, and we do that to all disks. The options are boot only, all disks, and disabled. So, if you just want to be able to boot from one of these removable disks, that's what boot only is for. The little asterisk right there means that's the default. But we have it on all disks. And then, of course, blah, 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 display control A message, which we already saw that. For bootable CD-ROMs and Int13 extensions. So yeah, don't need to change anything. The SCSI disk utilities thing is for like doing low-level formats of the connected drives. We don't need to do that. In fact, I found out that's a very good way to burn a zip disk, and not like a CD. I mean like toast it, so you can't actually use it anymore. Because one thing I tried to do, one thing I thought that I had to do first was once I put a zip disk in there, I thought in order for it to be bootable with this particular card, that I first had to low-level format it using the SCSI disk utilities option right here. And I did that several times with several different disks, and it would look like it was working, and it would run for maybe 10, 15 minutes or so, and then invariably it would have some kind of weird error, and after that error, that zip disk would no longer be usable in anything. Like, I have several other zip drives just like this, and they're in various different connection methods, SCSI, IDE/parallel ITA, and a USB. And none of those drives, after failing a low-level format with this card, or readable in anything else. So yeah, I trashed 3 zip disks that way. Fortunately, I got them, all the ones that I have. I got like 10 or 15 of them in a big-ass bag at a flea market for $5, so there you go. So we're going to back out of that. Yes, we do want to exit. And even though we didn't change anything, it insists on rebooting anyway. So blah-de-blah, we go through the usual setup. I'm going to push escape to skip the memory test, because this memory's been tested like 800 billion times while I've been playing with this computer. I'm pretty sure it's good. So detecting, I could technically hit F4 to skip right there, but I don't feel safe doing that. And that's the BIOS for the SCSI card starting up again. It takes a little while right here because it's scanning all 16 SCSI channels. And then there's the end of the post screen. And you can hear it indeed. See the light going crazy right there. And it does indeed say, starting MS-DOS. Now it's going to load a buttload of stuff right here. It's going to load the sound card drivers. Actually, not really a buttload, but, you know, a few things. It takes a really friggin' long time because, well, the zip disk is kind of slow, but it does work. So doing some other stuff there. Loading some additional sound card drivers. It also loaded himem.sys, which you did not see. And that's it. So I've already installed the Doom 1.9 shareware on this and configured it to use this particular sound card. So let's see here. See if I can do this with one hand. We want to cd backslash. Oh, no. God, this keyboard is so stiff and not in a good way. cd backslash doom s. S is for shareware. And then we do Doom. Now let's go get a sandwich while this thing friggin' loads. Anyway, yeah, we got the protected mode runtime starting up right there, switching the CPU from 16-bit mode into 32-bit protected mode. And there you go, there's the Doom startup. 1.9, that's the newest version of Doom. This is the part that takes the longest right here, is the refresh daemon. Let's get some sounds of this drive. Actually, no, you're not going to be able to hear that because I'm talking through the Tyclet mic. Maybe I can get a little closer. Stick my chest at it like some kind of prostitute. It must be loading sequentially right now because it's not actually making a lot of noise. It should be sequential too because, you know, it's a big-ass file and there's nothing else on that disk, so it's just doing it. Okay, there we go. It's finishing, starting up. And there indeed is Doom shareware. Now notice the disk icon down in the lower right-hand corner. Every time it does that, it's loading something from the disk, usually like a texture or a sprite or something. And that's why the game is periodically freezing like that, because it's loading. And that takes a little bit of time each time. Now, Doom only loads things on demand. Once it's loaded, it stays loaded. So eventually this demo will smooth out the longer it runs. But hopefully you can hear the sound from that. Well, maybe not. Actually, I'm going to move yon mic over there specifically so you can hear it. Is that the speaker that works? Maybe. I think it is. Or are they both working? Let's try that one. So yeah, there is no doubt about it. This definitely works. So yeah, that is Doom running from a zip drive with DOS. How insane is that, huh? Yeah, I'm going with compact flash.